Welcome to Noir Street. Like, subscribe, and stay with the mystery. Tell me, which part of the world are you watching from?
Chapter 1. The open-door rain had been polishing New York since mid-afternoon, and by 8 o'clock Riddle Street looked as if it had been painted in black glass. Nero Wolfe was behind his desk on West 35th Street, reading an orchid catalogue. I was at mine, writing to a man who owed us money and had confused silence with payment. The telephone rang. Nero Wolfe's office. Archie Goodwin speaking, a man said. This is Inspector Silas Reed. Gideon Rook has been murdered. I knew the name. Gideon Rook collected mechanical birds, jeweled boxes, ancient clocks, and other objects designed to prove that wealth could be given moving parts. Where? His house on Riddle Street, locked study, possible poison. Wolfe lowered the catalogue. What connects him to us? I asked. Your card was in his hand. Did he telephone here? Ask Wolfe. I covered the receiver and reported. Wolfe's brows rose slightly. Fritz received a call during my afternoon hours, he said. The man refused his name but spoke of a bird carrying no message. Reed was still on the line. Come and look, he said. Wolfe frowned at the rain beyond the windows. Go, Archie. You want facts. I seldom send you out for exercise. Number 20, 4 Riddle Street was a narrow stone house with black railings and a carved bird above the entrance. 2 police cars stood outside, their lamps staining the rain red. Inspector Reed met me in the hall. He was tall, grey, haired, and quiet in a way that encouraged nervous people to continue talking until they damaged themselves. He led me upstairs. The study door was heavy oak. The police had forced its lock, leaving bright wounds around the frame. The housekeeper found it locked at 7:40, Reed said. The key was inside. 2 windows were latched, and the chimney is too narrow for a man. Anyone hear anything? No shot cry or struggle. The study was large and crowded with glass cases. Gideon Rook lay beside a writing desk. He was around 65, thin and silver, haired, dressed for dinner. His left hand was closed around one of Wolfe's business cards. Near his right hand lay a polished black thorn about 2 inches long. Beneath Rook's left ear was a tiny puncture surrounded by a faint blue stain. On the desk stood an ornate brass birdcage. It was nearly 2 feet tall, shaped like a domed tower, with silver vines curling around its bars. Its little brass door hung open. A silver clockwork finch sat on the upper perch. Its wings were folded, its jeweled eyes faced the dead man, and a winding key protruded from its back. No bird had escaped. What killed him? I asked. The doctor suspects poison on the thorn. Who opened the cage? No one admits it. The housekeeper saw the door closed at 6. I moved nearer. The cage held 2 perches. The silver finch occupied the upper one. Beneath the lower perch were 2 empty brackets. What belongs there? It showed Rook beside the same cage at an exhibition 5 years earlier. A shallow silver cup rested upon the lower brackets. The cup was missing. Nothing else was taken, I asked. Coins, watches, and jeweled boxes worth thousands are untouched. Then either the thief disliked money or the cup was not merely a cup. A thin streak of black wax marked the open cage door. 1 vertical bar beside it looked brighter than the others, as though recently handled. The finch's beak was open, and a strand of red silk was caught inside. A short man waited near the bookcase. His fingers were stained with oil. This is Amos Bell, Reed said, Rook's clockmaker. What does the bird do? I asked. It sings, Bell replied. When wounded, it turns, spreads its wings, and produces 6 notes. Does it fire thorns? Certainly not. Could someone alter it to do so? Any spring can release force, but the beak is too narrow for that thorn. What did it contain? Nothing, Reed said. Rook telephoned Bell at 6:30 and asked whether the cup could be removed without opening the front door. What did you tell him? I asked. That it could not. Bell indicated the bright vertical bar. That bar is hollow and can be unscrewed. Someone with a narrow tool could reach through the opening and lift the cup from its brackets. Who knew? Mr. Rook and I, possibly his secretary. I examined the room. A glass display case stood open along one wall. Inside were mechanical insects, miniature carriages, and metal birds. One space was empty. The label beneath it, read Blackthorn Dart, origin unknown. The thorn beside Rook had apparently come from that case. Who had the case key? I asked. Rook, Reed said. It is still on his watch chain. Duplicate. Possible. I crouched near the body. Fine grey powder marked Rook's collar. The same powder lay beneath the birdcage. Brass polish, Bell said. The cage was cleaned yesterday. By whom? Daniel Pike, Mr. Rook's secretary. I examined Wolfe's card in the dead man's hand. It had been folded once. On the back, in firm pencil, Rook had written, "The open door is false. Count the bars." I counted them. 12 bars stood on the left side of the cage door. 11 stood on the right. The hollow bar had been replaced incorrectly, leaving a wider space near the lower perch. He wrote that before dying, Reed said. Yes, a dying message would name a murderer. This is an instruction from a man who expected trouble. We went downstairs. 5 people waited in the drawing room. Beatrice Rook, Gideon's daughter, was in her early 30s, dark-haired and composed. By effort, her cousin Owen Rook sat near the fireplace. He was 35, handsome and displeased by anything he could not control. Daniel Pike, the secretary, stood beside the window. He was 40, thin, and wore a brown suit with a dark red tie. Martha Crane, curator of the Rook collection, had a square face, sharp eyes, and the expression of a woman who had corrected many labels and several people. Dr. Edwin Hart occupied the chair nearest the door. Reed introduced me. Owen Rook said, "Why is Wolfe involved?" "Your uncle died holding his card." That proves only that he knew Wolfe. It also proves he expected Wolfe to know something. Beatrice spoke. "Father intended to consult Mr. Wolfe tomorrow. He believed someone had been stealing from the collection. The silver cup. I don't know. He would not tell me." Martha Crane said, "Nothing was missing before tonight. The blackthorn dart left its display case. That thorn had no established value. It has acquired some." Dr. Hart leaned forward. "The puncture entered close to a major blood vessel. The blue stain suggests a fast poison. Death may have followed within a minute." "Could he have stabbed himself accidentally, not behind his own ear?" Reed asked Daniel Pike to repeat his statement. "I saw Mr. Rook alive at 7:10, Pike said. "He dismissed me for the evening." "Was the cage door open?" I asked. "Number, was the silver cup present?" "I did not notice. You polished the cage yesterday." "Yes." "What did you use?" "Grey powder and a soft cloth." "Color of the cloth?" "Red." That explained the silk in the finch's beak, unless someone had put it there to explain it. "Where is the cloth now?" "In the basement workshop." "Did Mr. Rook accuse you of theft?" Pike hesitated. "He asked whether I had opened the cage after cleaning it." "Had you?" "Number between 7:10 and 7:40, Beatrice claimed she had been in the dining room with Martha. Owen said he had made telephone calls from the upstairs guest room. Dr. Hart had been reading in the library. Pike claimed he left the house at 7:15. At 7:40, the housekeeper found the study locked after Rook failed to appear for dinner. "Who benefits under the will?" I asked. Owen gave me a thin smile. "You move quickly. Your uncle stopped moving completely." Beatrice answered. "The house and most of the collection come to me. Owen receives a trust. Mr. Pike receives $10,000. Several objects go to the City Museum." "What objects?" Martha Crane folded her arms. "The list is private." "Not since the owner acquired a puncture. It includes the silver finch and its cage." "Including the missing cup?" "Yes." "What made the cup important?" The curator glanced at Beatrice. Beatrice nodded. "Tell him," Martha said. 3 weeks ago, Gideon discovered an inscription beneath it. The numbers suggested that the cage belonged to Judge Samuel Rook, the founder of the family fortune. Judge Rook was a collector, a smuggler with a court appointment, Owen said. He brought valuable objects into the city without declaring them. Martha ignored him. According to family history, Samuel kept a coded record of those objects. Gideon believed the numbers beneath the cup formed part of the code. Did he copy them? Yes. He placed the copy in his study safe. Reed and I returned upstairs. The safe stood behind a painting. It had been opened with the proper combination. Securities and jewelry remained inside, but an envelope marked Finch cipher was empty. Beatrice, Owen, Pike, and Martha all knew the combination. The missing silver cup had contained numbers. The stolen paper copied those numbers. Someone had taken both while leaving objects of obvious value untouched. I telephoned Wolfe. He listened as I described the locked room. Puncture, thorn cage, Finch, missing cup, hollow bar, red silk, open safe, and Rook's message. How far was the cage from Mr. Rook's chair? He asked. About 3 feet. Was the spring in the bird fully released? I'll ask Bell. Position of its beak, open and facing the body. You suspect the Finch fired the thorn. It has a spring, the room is locked, and the victim has a hole in him. That conclusion has been arranged for you. What about the key inside the study door? Was it turned? Yes. Could the lock close automatically? Number, then either the killer found another exit or Mr. Rook locked the door before he died. Why would he? Because he expected to be alone. Wolfe paused. Examine the cage floor, Archie. Count every bracket, screw, groove, and shadow. The open door is theatrical. The cage is incomplete in more than one place. I returned to the study. Amos Bell removed the clockwork Finch and tested its spring. It had run down completely. He wound it again. The Finch turned its jeweled head, spread its silver wings, and sang 5 clear notes. Bell went still. It should sing 6. He opened the bird's body. Inside were 6 narrow metal reeds. One had been removed. In its place was a slim groove designed to hold a tightly rolled strip of paper. The strip was gone. The open cage door directed attention toward the missing cup. The empty safe directed attention toward the stolen cipher. But someone had also opened the clockwork bird and removed the message hidden inside its 6th note. A faint smear of blue poison stained the empty reed mounting. Reed stared at it. Could the missing reed have caused the puncture? Bell shook his head. It was blunt. It made sound, not wounds. Then why poison its compartment? Perhaps the paper was treated, I said. Summoning expected the reader to touch it. The silver cup had supplied numbers. The hidden paper might have explained them. We returned to the drawing room to question Daniel Pike. His chair was empty. The courtyard window stood open. Rain had blown across the carpet. Pike's red tie had been cut through and left beside the chair. Pinned to it was a second blackthorn dart. Reed rushed into the courtyard, while 2 officers searched the ground floor. I examined the window. No muddy prints entered or left. The rain on the outer ledge remained undisturbed, except for a narrow streak made from inside. Pike had not escaped through the window. Someone had opened it to make us think he had. His brown coat was gone, but his hat remained in the entrance hall. In its band, I found a folded slip of paper bearing 6 handwritten numbers. They did not match the copied cipher described by Martha Crane. Across the bottom, Gideon Rook had written, "Pike knows why the Finch lost its last note." Inspector Reed returned without him. "Pike is gone." "No," I said. "He is still in the house, or someone carried him out before we entered this room." We searched the basement workshop. The red polishing cloth lay on a bench. Beside it stood a bottle of grey powder and a small hand drill. One bit matched the scratches around the hollow cage bar. In the furnace room, we found Daniel Pike unconscious behind a stack of coal sacks. He had been struck above the right temple. His wrists were tied with red silk cut from the polishing cloth. When Dr. Hart revived him, Pike asked one question. "Is the bird still in its cage?" "Yes," Reed replied. Pike closed his eyes. Then the murderer took the wrong thing. What should have been taken? I asked. The bird's shadow. That was not helpful, and he lost consciousness before improving it. I telephoned Wolfe again. The missing secretary has been found in the basement. He says the murderer took the wrong thing and should have taken the bird's shadow. Wolfe was silent. Then he said, "Turn off the study lamps." I did. Reed closed the door, leaving only the desk lamp burning behind the cage. The silver finch cast a sharp shadow against the wall. Its body and wings appeared ordinary, but beneath the lower perch, where the silver cup had been, the bars cast a pattern of narrow lines interrupted by one wider space. The pattern resembled writing. I moved the desk lamp slightly. 6 numbers appeared in shadow against the wall. The hollow bar, the missing cup, and the lower brackets formed a simple projection device. With the cup removed and the light placed correctly, the cage displayed a second cipher. The numbers in Pike's hat matched it exactly. The thief had stolen the cup and the written copy from the safe, but the cage itself still preserved the code. Wolfe's voice remained on the telephone. The murderer opened the cage to take the cup, he said, but in doing so revealed what the cup had concealed, the real cipher. Half of it, the missing 6th reed, supplied the other half, and whoever took the reed now has it. Indeed. Reed stared at the shadow numbers. What do they identify? He asked. From the doorway, Martha Crane answered. A drawer in the Rook Collection archive. She had entered without our hearing her. Her face had lost its usual firmness. That drawer contains Judge Rook's private purchase records, she continued. If Gideon was right, they prove that one object in this house was never lawfully owned by the Rook family. Which object? I asked. She looked toward the dead collector. Not an object, she said. A fortune. Outside, rain continued, falling over Riddle Street. Inside the locked study, the clockwork finch remained on its perch, innocent of escape and possibly of murder. The cage door was open. The bird was still there, but a missing cup, a stolen note, and 6 lines of shadow had opened a second door, one leading into the history of the Rook fortune. Summonen had killed Gideon Rook to close it. Chapter 2, the missing perch at 10 the next morning. The silver finch sang 5 notes in Nero Wolfe's office. It should have sung 6. Inspector Silas Reed had brought the birdcage from Riddle Street, accompanied by Amos Bell, the clockmaker, and a police technician named Grant. Wolfe objected to having a poisoned murder exhibit placed near his desk, but Reed assured him the cage had been tested and cleaned. Cleaning evidence is an odd way of preserving it, Wolfe said. Grant took samples first. He took the samples he noticed. Reed ignored that. He was accustomed to Wolfe, which meant he knew when argument was merely being charged rent. The cage stood on the large table near the globe. Its brass door remained open. The silver cup was missing from its lower brackets. One clockwork reed had vanished from the finch, and the hollow vertical bar had been returned to the wrong place. Amos Bell wound the bird. Its jeweled head turned. Its silver wings opened. 5 clear notes sounded through the office. On the final movement, the finch faced the empty lower half of the cage. Bell frowned. The shadow is wrong. What shadow? Reed asked. The pattern formed by the bars. Mr. Rook discovered that the cage projected numbers when light passed through it. We saw 6 figures last night, I said. They were incomplete. Bell pointed beneath the bird. The lower perch is gone. I looked at the exhibition photograph Reed had brought. It clearly showed 2 perches, the silver upper perch supporting the finch, and a thin brass perch crossing below it. What I had taken for the lower perch on the murder night was merely a fixed support behind it. The real perch had disappeared. The cage has lost a cup, a reed, and now a perch, I said. At this rate, by lunch, we'll have only the door. Reed removed a folded paper from an evidence envelope and placed it before Wolfe. This was found in Gideon's dinner jacket during the second search. The note contained 1 sentence written in block letters. At 10, the bird will sing, and the thief will lose his name. Wolfe examined it. Was it sent to Mr. Rook? We don't know. The paper came from his house. There is no signature. Why was it missed? It was inside a pocket beneath the jacket lining. Deliberately hidden, Wolfe said. Either Mr. Rook feared someone would search his study, or the murderer wished us to find the note later. Reed sat in the red leather chair. I questioned 4 more people this morning. Gideon's niece Mara Rook, museum curator Edwin Ash, junior secretary Jonah Bell, and senior housekeeper Ruth Calder, Beatrice Rook. And the others questioned on the murder night had described the cage generally. These 4 had handled either Gideon's records or his collection, and could answer for its smaller parts. Bring them, Wolfe said. They're downstairs. You anticipated me. I anticipated Goodwin. I went to the front room and brought them in. Mara Rook entered first. She was 28, pale and dark-haired, with a direct gaze inherited from her uncle. Edwin Ash followed, a round man of 50 wearing silver spectacles and a black coat. Jonah Bell, Amos Bell's son, was 26 and nervous enough to keep his right hand in his pocket. Ruth Calder came last, dressed in grey and carrying herself like a woman who had managed a difficult house by refusing to be hurried. Wolfe addressed Ruth. You saw the cage yesterday morning? Yes, sir, at 8. What was inside it? The silver bird. Nothing else? No other bird. Was there a lower perch? Ruth examined the cage. Yes, a narrow brass one beneath the finch. Did you touch it? My polishing cloth caught on several holes along its underside. How many? 7, I think. Amos Bell nodded. Correct. The holes formed part of the shadow code. Reed looked at him. You didn't mention that last night. You asked about the bird, not the perch. Reed's expression indicated that future questions would be broader. Wolfe asked Ruth, who had entered the study after she cleaned it. Mr. Pike brought letters at 9. Miss Rook visited before noon. Mr. Ash inspected the cage after lunch. Jonah carried collection records into the study at 3. Jonah shook his head. I left the books with Mr. Pike. You carried them through the study door yourself, Ruth said. I do not remember doing so. Memory is often shy when the police arrive, I said. Wolfe turned to Mara. Why did your uncle request your presence? He wanted letters written by Judge Samuel Rook, the founder of our family fortune. Why? He believed the judge hid names inside mechanical objects. What names? Buyers of stolen goods. Judge Rook assigned each buyer the name of a bird so the records could not be read openly. Which bird represented the Rook family? The finch. Did you know the lower perch could be removed? No. Ruth looked at her. You watched me clean it last week. I watched you clean the cage. I did not inspect every piece. Mara's answer was firm, but her left hand had tightened around the arm of her chair. Wolfe shifted his attention to Edwin Ash. You inspected the cage yesterday? Yes. Gideon planned to leave it to the City Museum. His daughter says the current will leaves it with the private collection. He intended to revise the will. Was the lower brass perch present? Ash hesitated. I cannot be certain. You are a curator. Physical details are your profession. I studied the maker's marks, not the internal fittings. Did you see the silver cup? I do not recall it. Did you open the cage? No. Wolfe's eyes moved to Jonah Bell. You assisted your father in repairing the finch last winter? Yes. Did you remove the lower perch? I repaired the wing spring. Amos Bell faced his son. You removed the perch and cleaned its holes with a needle. Jonah looked at him. That may have been another cage. There was no other cage. Jonah's right hand remained in his pocket. Wolfe said, Remove your hand. Jonah did not move. Reed stood slowly. Jonah withdrew it. A fresh cut crossed his palm. Black wax stained the skin around it. How did you get that? Reed asked. Broken glass in the archive room. Grant examined that room. There is no broken glass. Jonah looked toward the cage. Wolfe said, The hollow bar carries black wax. So does the inner edge of the cage door. Your hand carries the same material. I repaired an old document case. Whose? Jonah pointed toward Edwin Ash. The museum's Rook travel case. Ash's face changed. You did no such thing. You gave it to me yesterday afternoon. What did the case contain? Reed asked. Ash removed his spectacles. An inventory prepared after Judge Rook's death. Why conceal that? It has never been authenticated. Was the finch listed? Yes. Item 17. And the cage? Item 18. They had originally been separate objects. The finch hid a paper inside its sixth musical reed. The cage projected numbers through its bars, cup, and lower perch. Someone had later combined the two devices, so one code completed the other. Wolfe tapped the note. At 10, the bird will sing, and the thief will lose his name. What was scheduled for 10 this morning? The museum board meeting, Mara said. Edwin Ash stiffened. Gideon intended to present evidence, she continued. He believed the cipher identified a stolen object displayed in the Ash Hall. Ash Hall was the museum's largest exhibition room. It was named for Edwin Ash's grandfather. What object? Reed asked. Jonah answered. A carved shipping seal donated by the Ash family. Gideon believed Judge Rook stole it, then sold it to Edwin's grandfather. Ash stood. That is false. If proved, Jonah continued, the Ash name would be removed from the hall. The thief would lose his name. Wolfe looked at Ash. You had a public motive to stop Mr. Rook. I did not kill him. Did you remove the perch? No. Did you know its holes altered the shadow code? I knew only that the cage contained some trick. Amos Bell took a strip of dark card and placed it where the missing perch had been. Following Ruth Calder's description, he pierced 7 small holes, 3 near each end and 1 in the center. Fritz brought a narrow lamp and white paper. Bell positioned the lamp behind the cage. I held the paper before it. The shadow changed. The bars and 7 openings formed a date. Shubi Shuti Bashiyi Mara recognized it. October 17th, Itembabe Bashiyi. Judge Samuel Rook died that day. The date identifies the correct estate inventory, Wolfe said. Item 17 was the finch. The missing 6th reed must have carried the owner's name. Grant entered carrying an evidence envelope. He had searched the basement workshop where Daniel Pike had been found unconscious. Behind the furnace, he discovered a narrow brass tube pierced by 7 holes. The missing lower perch, one end was stained with blood. Reed examined it. Gideon's. We'll test it, Grant said. Amos Bell stared at the tube. The blackthorn dart would fit inside it. A blowpipe, I said. The puncture behind Gideon's ear had been blamed upon the thorn found beside his body. Now we knew how the thorn could have been delivered silently from several feet away. The cage had not fired the poisoned dart. Its missing perch had. Reed looked at the 4 people before Wolfe. Who knew the perch was hollow? Amos Bell answered. Jonah and I. Jonah swallowed. Mr. Ash knew. He watched us remove it last winter. Ash stepped backward. Reed moved toward him, but the curator opened his leather case and threw a handful of papers into the office fireplace. I reached them before the flames did much damage. One narrow strip burned through the center. 3 words remained visible: Ash, seal, 17, a copy of the missing 6th note. Reed took Ash's arm. This was in your case. Ash's face had turned gray. It proves the shipping seal was stolen. It does not prove I murdered Gideon. Wolfe leaned back. Correct, you had motive, knowledge, and concealed evidence. Those facts demand explanation, not immediate conviction. Ruth Calder had been watching the brass perch. There is something wrong with the blood, she said. Reed turned. What? Mr. Rook's wound was beneath his left ear. If someone fired the thorn through that tube, why is blood on the tube itself? The thorn would have entered the wound. The perch would never have touched Gideon. Grant examined the stain again. It may not be blood from the murder. It was smeared on deliberately. Another planted clue, I said. Wolfe's eyes closed halfway. The murderer removed 3 apparently worthless pieces, the cup, reed, and perch. Because together they exposed the cipher. He later hid the perch in Mr. Pike's workshop and stained it to strengthen a false conclusion. Then the blowpipe theory is wrong, Reed asked. Not necessarily. The perch may have delivered the thorn, but the stain was added afterward to tell you that it did. Reed looked at Jonah Bell. The black wax on Jonah's hand linked him to the cage. Edwin Ashe possessed a copy of the hidden name. Ruth Calder alone remembered the 7 holes. Mara Rook knew the judge's letters and the meaning of the date. Each had concealed something. The little brass door remained open, and the silver finch sat patiently on its upper perch. No one had valued the lower perch while it was present. Now it had become a cipher key, a possible murder weapon, and a planted accusation. The murderer had expected nobody to miss it. That expectation was the first mistake. Chapter 3. The collector's secret. Edwin Ashe remained in Nero Wolfe's office after the others had been sent to the front room. Inspector Silas Reed had not arrested him. Possession of the copied cipher, an attempt to burn it, and a family name threatened with removal from a museum hall made an impressive pile of suspicion. But suspicion is not improved merely by being stacked high. Ashe sat in the red leather chair without his black coat. He appeared smaller without it. Wolfe regarded him from behind his desk. "You lied about the meeting at 10. Ashe removed his silver spectacles. "I omitted part of the truth. That phrase is a well-dressed lie. The museum board did meet at 10 this morning. Gideon intended to present evidence concerning the shipping seal, but he had arranged another meeting for 10 last night." "With whom?" Reed asked. "I don't know. You expect us to believe he told you the time but not the guest. He wanted me present as a witness. He said the person would either confess or be exposed. Exposed for stealing the seal, number for placing forged objects in Gideon's collection." That improved the room's attention. Ashe opened his leather case carefully, now that throwing its contents into the fireplace had failed. He removed a typed inventory. During the past 2 months, Gideon discovered that at least 5 objects in his collection were forgeries. "What objects?" I asked. "A carved ivory tower, a silver prayer box, 2 jeweled watches, and a miniature mechanical owl. Value of the genuine pieces, more than $2 million. Value of the forgeries, as workmanship, several thousand; as evidence, considerably more." Reed said. "Who authenticated the objects when Rook bought them?" "Different experts. That was why Gideon failed to see the pattern for years." "What pattern?" "The ownership records all passed through the same private archive before reaching him." "Whose archive?" Ashe hesitated. Wolfe made a low sound. "Martha Crane's," Ashe said. "Martha managed Gideon's private collection. She had examined nearly every object in the house and prepared the records supporting their histories." "Was she the person expected at 10? Reed asked. "I don't know." "Did Gideon suspect her?" "He suspected everyone who had handled the records, including me and Amos Bell. Bell restored the mechanical objects. Daniel Pike arranged payments. Jonah Bell maintained the collection books. Mara researched family ownership." A collector of valuable objects had surrounded himself with people professionally qualified to deceive him. Wolfe asked, "How did Mr. Rook discover the substitutions?" "The mechanical owl." Ashe placed a photograph on the desk. It showed a small gold bird with green stones for eyes. "Gideon bought it 9 years ago. Last month, its spring broke. Amos Bell opened it and found a maker's stamp dated 20 years later than the claimed origin. Could Bell have made the copy? He could have made the mechanism, not the gold body." "Could you?" "Number, Miss Crane. She understands metalwork, but I cannot accuse her." "You have done so while avoiding the grammar." Ashe looked toward the birdcage. Gideon believed the forgeries were connected to Judge Rook's coded inventory. Someone used the old records to create false ownership histories. Genuine objects were removed and copies placed in his collection. "Where did the originals go?" Reed asked. "Private buyers, perhaps. Gideon thought the cipher would identify them." I said. "That gives the missing cup, Reed, and Perch a larger job. They didn't merely expose a stolen seal. They exposed a forgery route." Wolfe nodded, "And threatened a living thief, not merely a dead ancestor." Reed called Mara Rook back into the office. She listened while Ashe described the forged objects. Her expression did not change, but she stopped looking at him. "Did your uncle tell you?" Reed asked. He told me 3 objects were false, not 5. When 6 days ago? Did he name a suspect? Number, he said. He had hidden the proof somewhere a thief would never think to examine. Inside the cage. Mara looked at the empty lower brackets. Possibly. Why not a safe? Because the thief had already opened his safe twice. That was new. Reed leaned forward. When? 3 weeks ago and again last Monday. Nothing obvious was taken. Uncle changed the combination, but the safe was opened again. Who knew the new combination? No one, according to him. Yet the copy of the Finch cipher disappeared from it on the murder night. Yes, Wolfe asked. Where did Mr. Rook usually conceal important evidence? Inside. Unimportant objects. He once hid a disputed ownership letter in the wooden base of a cheap clock. Another time, he placed a diamond receipt inside a hollow curtain weight. Did he use mechanical objects? Often, he said. Thieves looked at gold and ignored screws. That sounded like a motto Gideon Rook could have placed above his collection. Reed brought the missing brass perch from its evidence envelope. It was 11 inches long, narrow, and pierced by 7 holes, one end unscrewed. Grant had cleaned away the planted blood, but preserved samples from inside. The tube was hollow. Reed tilted it over a sheet of white paper. 3 tiny fragments fell out. A curl of thin paper, a grain of red sealing wax, and a short strand of blue thread. Mara bent closer. Uncle's evidence envelopes were sealed with red wax. What about the blue thread? I asked. He tied important documents with it. The missing perch had contained a rolled document. Someone had removed it before hiding the tube behind the basement furnace. Grant examined the open end. There are fresh scratches inside. A hook tool was used to pull something out. Jonah Bell's cut palm and black wax connected him to the hollow cage bar, but the tool marks inside the perch were narrow and regular. Amos Bell examined them through a lens. A watchmaker's extractor could do this. Do you own one? Reed asked. Yes, Jonah. Yes, anyone else? Martha Crane keeps restoration tools. Edwin Ash's museum workshop has several. Again the clue offered too many owners, Wolfe asked. Could the document have been removed without taking the perch from the cage? No, Amos replied. One end was blocked by the cage wall. The other was held beneath the front bracket. So the thief opened the cage, removed the silver cup, unscrewed the hollow bar, took out the lower perch, and extracted the hidden paper. Yes, then why replace neither cup nor perch to make Gideon believe the cage had been robbed? I suggested. Wolfe shook his head. Gideon was dead. The display was arranged for the police, Reed said. The open cage door made the theft obvious. It made one theft obvious. The silver cup appeared valuable enough to explain the open door. The missing perch appeared worthless and was initially overlooked. The murderer wished us to notice the cup and ignore the paper hidden in the perch. Mara's gaze remained fixed on the brass tube. My uncle knew the thief would search the cage. How? Reed asked. He sent messages to 4 people yesterday. Each message claimed the evidence had been hidden in a different object. Wolfe's eyes opened fully. Explain. To Edwin, he mentioned the birdcage. To Martha, he mentioned a writing box. To Amos Bell, a jeweled watch. To Jonah, a bronze ship. A trap, I said. Whichever object was searched would identify the thief. Mara nodded. He placed a tiny paper seal across each object's opening. Was any seal broken? I don't know. Uncle planned to inspect them before the 10 o'clock meeting. Reed looked at Ash. Your message named the cage. Ash's face tightened. I never received such a message. Mara turned to him. I delivered it to your museum office myself. To my assistant, perhaps. I did not see it. Wolfe rang for Fritz and requested all 4 objects be brought from Riddle Street under police guard. An hour later, the writing box, jeweled watch, bronze ship, and empty birdcage stood in the office. The writing box's seal was intact. So was the watch's. The bronze ship had no seal. Jonah Bell stared at it. There was never one. Mara examined the base. A pale rectangle showed where a small strip of paper had been removed. The seal was here. Reed looked at Jonah. Your message named the ship. I did not search it. What did it contain? Nothing. Wolfe glared. Jonah corrected himself. It has a hollow mast, but I never opened it. Grant opened the bronze mast. Inside was a rolled sheet tied with blue thread and sealed with red wax. The paper contained a list of the 5 forged objects, the dates Gideon purchased them, and the names of the intermediaries who supplied them. Every sale had been approved by the same witness, Edwin Ashash, Rose. This is absurd. Someone placed that list there to accuse me. Possibly, Wolfe said. Possibly. Gideon told me the cage contained evidence. Why would I search the bronze ship? You would not. Wolfe turned to Jonah. But someone who intercepted both messages might search both objects. Jonah's face went white. Reed stepped toward him. Did you handle Gideon's outgoing correspondence? I logged it. Did you open Ash's message? Numbered. Did you remove the seal from the bronze ship? Number. Amos Bell looked at his son. Jonah, I did not kill him. That was not the question. Reed said. Jonah's cut hand began trembling. I opened the ship, he admitted. But not to steal anything. Mr. Rook told me the ship contained proof against my father. Amos Bell stared at him. You said my message named the ship. It did. It said the ship would reveal who had built the forged mechanisms. Did you take the list? Number. I read it and put it back. Did you break the cage seal? Reed asked. Number. Grant inspected the birdcage under stronger light. On the underside of its base, he found a tiny patch where a paper seal had been cut and replaced with clear gum. The seal had not merely been broken. It had been repaired to look untouched. Martha Crane used clear restoration gum in Gideon's collection. So did Edwin Ash's museum workshop. Mara looked at the empty perch. The thief learned the cage contained evidence, opened it, removed the document, and repaired the trap before Uncle could inspect it. Then Gideon believed his test had failed, Reed said. No, Wolfe replied. The open cage proves the thief returned after Mr. Rook's death and abandoned concealment. Why? I looked at the list from the bronze ship. Because the paper in the perch named someone different. Precisely. The list in the ship accused Edwin Ash of approving the forged purchases. The document hidden inside the perch must have identified the person who created or exchanged the objects. That document was now gone. The cup was missing. The 6th reed was missing. The hollow perch was empty. Gideon Rook had hidden his evidence inside objects. No ordinary thief would examine. Unfortunately, the person he meant to expose was no ordinary thief. The collector had built a trap from cages, clocks, and secret compartments. Summoner had entered it, removed its teeth, and killed him before 10. Chapter 4. Voices behind the wall, Jonah Bell's alibi, had a voice, but no body. Inspector Silas Reed brought him to the brownstone shortly after noon. Wolfe had finished lunch and was in the office with a cup of coffee, which meant Reed's timing was acceptable, though Wolfe did not reward him by saying so. Jonah sat in the red leather chair. His injured hand was bandaged, and his father, Amos Bell, stood near the bookshelves. Where were you between 7:10 and 7:40 on the murder night? Reed asked. In the archive room at Rook House. Doing what? Dictating catalogue notes. To whom? To a recording machine, Mr. Rook. Preferred spoken notes transcribed the following morning. Who saw you enter? Ruth Calder. Who saw you leave? No one. Weird opened his notebook. Ruth saw you carrying record books toward the study at 3. She did not see you enter the archive room that evening. She heard me. That is not the same thing. Jonah looked toward Wolfe. Mrs. Calder heard me dictating from 7 until nearly 7:30, she told the police. Wolfe stirred his coffee. Did she speak to you? Numbered, did you pause when she passed the door? I may have. Did you answer a question? She asked whether I wanted tea. What did you reply? Jonah hesitated. I don't remember. Did she hear a reply? You must ask her. I intend to. Wolfe rang for Fritz. Ruth Calder had been waiting in the front room, with Mara Rook, Edwin Ashe, and a young woman named Nell Ward. Nell was an architectural investigator employed by the City Museum. She had been sent by Edwin Ashe to examine damage caused when the police forced Gideon's study door. She was 30, practical, and wore a grey suit with enough pockets to support a small police department. Ruth Calder took Jonah's place in the red chair. "You heard Mr. Bell in the archive room?" Wolfe asked. "Yes, sir." "For how long?" "I passed the door at 7:05 and heard him dictating. I passed again around 7:20. 5 he was still speaking." "Did you see him?" "Number the door was closed." "Did you ask whether he wanted tea?" "Yes." "Did he answer?" Ruth frowned. "I thought he did." "What did he say?" "Something about item 42. That was part of his dictation, perhaps." "Did his voice stop when you spoke?" She considered. Number Jonah shifted near the bookshelves. Wolfe said, "You heard a voice. Mrs. Calder, you inferred a man." "I know Jonah's voice." "A recording may also know it." Amos Bell faced his son. "You used the cylinder machine?" Jonah said nothing. Reed stood. "Where is the recording?" "In the archive room." "It isn't, we searched. I left it in the machine. Then someone removed it." Jonah looked at him, perhaps the murderer, or the man who needed a speaking alibi. Wolfe turned to Nell Ward. "You noticed something unusual in the study?" "Yes." Loose papers on the eastern side of Gideon's desk trembled even though the windows were shut. Air movement. A faint one. It came from behind the main bookcase. Reed looked annoyed. "Why wasn't this reported last night?" "I noticed it this morning when the heating system started. The air current became stronger." "You examined the wall?" "The bookcase is attached to it. I wanted permission before moving anything." "You have it," Reed said. Wolfe looked at me. "Archie, you want me at Riddle Street. I want an exact description of whatever the wall has been saying." Riddle Street had dried under a cold afternoon wind by the time we reached number 24. Reed brought Grant and 2 officers. Nell Ward carried a measuring rod, a lamp, and a roll of building plans. The archive room stood directly east of Gideon's study. Its entrance opened from the upper hall, 4 doors away, because a closet and a narrow service passage separated the rooms. According to the plans, however, the study and archive shared 12 feet of wall. The archive contained shelves of catalogues, ownership papers, and wax cylinders used for recorded notes. A black dictating machine stood on a table beside the door. Its cylinder holder was empty. Ruth showed us where she had stood while hearing Jonah's voice through the closed archive door. Ordinary speech was muffled but understandable. Nell crossed to the western bookcase. A row of catalogues shifted slightly in the moving air. Behind them was a brass grill, no larger than a playing card. "A speaking vent," she said. "Large houses use them to communicate between rooms before electric call systems." Grant removed the grill. Beyond it ran a narrow metal channel inside the wall. Reed went into the study while I remained in the archive. He spoke from behind Gideon's bookcase. His voice emerged clearly from the archive grill. "That explains why Ruth heard Jonah," I said. "Not yet," Reed replied through the wall. "If Jonah was in the study, his voice could travel into the archive, but Gideon was alive until at least 7:10. Pike saw him. Jonah could have entered later through the study door. The door was locked from inside when the body was found." Nell examined the building plans. "The speaking vent is only part of the original system. There should be an inspection panel." We emptied the study bookcase. It was built on small concealed wheels and secured by 2 screws. Once the screws were removed, the entire case rolled forward. Behind it was a wooden panel 3 feet high. Reed opened it. The space beyond was not a full passage, but a maintenance shaft, nearly 2 feet wide. It ran behind the study wall and ended beside the archive fireplace. A thin man could move through it sideways. Jonah Bell was thin. At shoulder height, the speaking tube crossed the shaft. Its study end opened through a second grill behind Gideon's desk chair. The puncture was beneath Gideon's left ear. A man inside the shaft could place the hollow brass perch into the vent and fire a poisoned thorn directly toward the chair. The locked study door had never needed to open. Reed entered the shaft. Near the archive end, he found a small metal bracket attached to the wall. Black wax marked its screws. Amos, Bell examined it. A clockwork timer was mounted here. To do what? Reed asked. Operate a phonograph or dictating machine. The murderer could record Jonah's catalogue notes, place the cylinder in a hidden machine, and use a timer to play his voice through the speaking vent while he moved elsewhere. But the bracket proved only that a machine had been present. It did not establish who had used it. Grant found grey dust on the shaft floor, red silk caught on a nail, and a short length of blue thread. The same colors had appeared on the cage and the hidden documents. At the study end of the shaft lay a blackthorn tip broken from a dart. Reed placed it beside the thorn found near Gideon's body. The break matched. The thorn on the carpet was planted, he said. The real dart broke after striking him. I crouched inside the shaft and looked through the vent. Gideon's chair stood 3 feet away, the angle aligned with the wound. The method was plain. The killer hid inside the wall. The recorded voice established presence in the archive. The hollow perch served as a blowpipe. Gideon locked his own study door because he believed he was alone. A poisoned thorn traveled through the speaking vent and struck him beneath the ear. Then the killer entered the study after his death, either through the movable bookcase or by reaching through the inspection panel, opened the cage, removed the cipher pieces, and returned through the wall. The room remained locked. Reed summoned Jonah Bell. He stood before the open shaft with his face pale. "You knew about this," Reed said. "Number, you worked in the archive for 4 years. I never moved the bookcase. Your recorded voice gave you an alibi. Your father knew clockwork timers. You knew the perch was hollow. I did not kill Gideon. Where is the cylinder? I don't know. Who recorded your voice?" Jonah looked toward the archive machine. "I did." Amos Bell closed his eyes. Jonah continued. "Mr. Rook ordered me to dictate the catalogue notes at 6. At 7, he told me to leave the cylinder in the machine and go downstairs. Why, he said he wanted to test whether Ruth could distinguish a recording from a live voice." Reed stared at him. "You expect me to accept that?" "It is true." "Why conceal it?" "Because after he died, I knew the recording would make my alibi appear false." "It was false." "Yes, but I did not create it as an alibi." Wolfe heard the report by telephone. "The method is satisfactory," he said. "Satisfactory? A man used a wall vent and clockwork recording to kill someone in a locked room." I referred to the explanation, not the murder. Jonah had the knowledge and body size to use the shaft. So did Miss Rook, Miss Ward, and possibly Mr. Pike. Nell Ward discovered the vent. Discovery may be either service or insurance. You suspect her? I suspect statements, not people. Why was the cage door opened after the murder? To remove the evidence from the hollow perch. Then the killer entered the study through the movable bookcase. Was any dust disturbed beneath it? I checked. The floor behind the case carried several marks, but Grant found one, especially clear print made in grey dust. It showed a narrow shoe with a small square repair on the heel. Jonah's shoes had plain heels. Nell Ward's were broad. Mara's were narrow but unrepaired. Tidwin Ash's right shoe carried a square leather patch. Reed looked at Ash. The museum curator stared at his heel. I have never entered that shaft. Then your shoe has been traveling without you, I said. Wolfe remained on the line. Too convenient, he said. Another planted clue? Possibly. The murderer concealed the speaking vent for years, removed a recording cylinder, recovered a broken dart, and dismantled the cage. Yet he left a complete shoeprint belonging to the man with the most public motive. Then what should we look for? The wind. I glanced at the loose papers, trembling beside Gideon's desk. The vent current. Indeed, Mr. Rook was struck behind the left ear. Determine whether air moving from the archive toward the study would alter the flight of a thorn. Grant tested it using an unpoisoned needle of similar weight. With the heating system off, the needle traveled straight from the shaft to the chair. When the heat started, air moved from the study toward the archive. A dart fired through the vent was pushed upward and struck the wall. The heating system had started at 7:15. Gideon could not have been shot through the vent after that time. Daniel Pike had seen him alive at 7:10. The murder window had narrowed to 5 minutes. Ruth Calder heard Jonah's recorded voice throughout those 5 minutes. Edwin Ashe claimed to be downstairs with Mara. Mara claimed to be with Beatrice. Amos Bell said he had left the house. Summonen had arranged the voice, entered the wall, fired before the heat came on, escaped through the archive, and then returned to join the household before Gideon was found. The locked door was no longer an impossible obstacle. But the voice behind the wall had not cleared Jonah Bell. It had merely told us exactly when the murderer needed him to sound alive somewhere else. Chapter 5. The poisoned thorn. Dr. Tobias Hale arrived at the brownstone carrying a blackthorn dart in a glass tube and a warning that no one should touch it. Wolfe looked at the tube, then at Hale. I had no intention of doing so. Hale was the police toxicologist, a tall man with a bald head and a voice too cheerful for his profession. Inspector Silas Reed sat in the red leather chair. I occupied my desk, while the silver finch and its incomplete cage stood beneath a cloth at the far end of the office. Hale placed the glass tube on Wolfe's desk. This is the thorn found beside Gideon Rook's body. It came from a climbing palm that grows in South America. Rook acquired a case of 12 ceremonial darts 11 years ago. Ceremonial? I asked. That is the word collectors use when they want a weapon to sound housebroken. What was on it? Reed asked. A plant-based arrow poison. It attacks the nerves controlling breath. In a strong dose, a man remains conscious for several seconds but cannot call for help. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. How long from puncture to death? Between 30 seconds and 2 minutes. Could Mr. Rook have locked his study after being struck? Possible, but unlikely. Fine movement would fail quickly. He locked it before the attack, I said. Hale nodded. That fits the wound. The dart entered beneath the left ear from behind and slightly above. Rook was probably seated at his desk, with his head turned toward the lamp. Reed opened the evidence folder. The broken tip found inside the wall matches the dart taken from Rook's display case. The thorn on the carpet was another from the same set. Then the murderer used one and planted another, Wolfe said. To direct us toward the cage as the firing mechanism, Reed replied. The cage was an attraction. The wall was the weapon's road. Dr. Hale removed a second tube. Inside it lay the broken point recovered from Gideon's wound. The poison on this fragment matches the poison on the planted thorn. Both were prepared from the same mixture. When? Wolfe asked. Recently the poison had been blended with beeswax to keep it on the point. The wax was soft and held fresh fibers. What fibers? Blue wool. Mara Rook had worn a blue wool dress on the murder night. Reed did not appear surprised. That meant he had already made the connection and was waiting to see whether Wolfe would dislike it. Wolfe did. Another fiber presented with enthusiasm, he said. You think it was planted? Reed asked. I think blue wool is common. Miss Rook's ownership of a blue dress does not establish that its fibers entered the wax from her clothing. The poison had to be prepared somewhere. Indeed, find the surface. Reed had already searched Rook House. The 12-dart case contained 10 thorns. One had killed Gideon. One had been planted beside him. The display, case lock, showed no force. Gideon carried the only official key. A duplicate was found in the collection office. Who used that office? Wolfe asked. Mara, Edwin Ashe, Jonah Bell, Martha Crane, and Daniel Pike. A democratic key. Dr. Hale continued. The poison itself came from a sealed bottle stored in Gideon's cabinet of South American objects. That bottle is missing. Who knew it contained active poison? I asked. Mara catalogued it. Edwin Ashe examined it for a museum exhibit. Jonah Bell typed the insurance description. The same 3 who knew the house and collection, Reed said. Wolfe lifted the cloth covering the cage with the tip of a pencil. The brass perch. Reed placed it on the table. It was 11 inches long and hollow. Dr. Hale had tested an unpoisoned thorn inside it. The dart fitted cleanly and could be propelled by a strong breath across several feet. Nell Ward's measurements established that the speaking vent opened 3 feet and 4 inches behind Gideon's chair. The perch was not designed as a blowpipe, Hale said, but it served perfectly. Any saliva inside? Wolfe asked. None. The tube was cleaned after use. Thoroughly. Almost at the mouth end, we found a trace of clove oil. Jonah Bell used clove oil for tooth pain. Edwin Ash carried clove lozenges. Mara's writing desk contained clove, scented sealing wax. Reed sighed when Hale listed all 3. This house has more cloves than a bakery. Shared clues are useful, Wolfe said. They expose the murderer's method of selecting evidence. You think he is making sure every clue points in 3 directions. Someone is. Dr. Hale demonstrated the attack with a wooden model of the study. Gideon sat at his desk facing north. The speaking vent opened behind his left shoulder. The killer, hidden in the maintenance shaft, inserted the brass perch into the opening and fired. The dart struck beneath Gideon's ear. He had no chance to cry out. The murderer withdrew the tube, entered the study through the movable bookcase, removed the dart, and placed a clean poisoned thorn near the body. Then the killer opened the cage and removed the silver cup, the 6th musical reed, and the evidence stored inside the hollow perch. The order matters, Wolfe said. Reed looked at him. Why? If the perch served as the weapon and also contained Mr. Rook's evidence, the murderer had to empty it before firing. A rolled paper inside would block the dart. So the killer entered the cage before the murder. Precisely, the cup, reed, and document were removed in advance. After killing Mr. Rook, the murderer opened the door again, or left it open to advertise a theft, I said. That means Gideon saw the cage incomplete before he died, unless the missing parts were restored temporarily. Amos Bell had made the cage's pieces removable. A false perch could have been inserted before the murder, then removed later. Reed sent Grant to examine the brackets again. Mara wore grey that day. Edwin had replaced his black coat with a brown one. Jonah's bandaged hand remained visible. Wolfe addressed Mara first. You catalogued the South American dart case. Yes. Did you know the poisoned bottle remained dangerous? My uncle told me never to open it. When did you last see it? 3 weeks ago. Did you know of the speaking vent? I knew the house had old voice tubes. I did not know one connected the archive to the study. Did you know the birdcage perch was hollow? Yet you knew your uncle hid documents inside ordinary objects. Yes. Wolfe turned to Edwin. You examined the dart collection for a proposed museum display. When? Last month. Did you open the poison cabinet? Gideon opened it. Did you handle the bottle? The City Museum possesses plans of Rook House. Nell Ward found them in our building archive. You could examine them. Yes. Did you know of the maintenance shaft? The plans show it. I did not study that section. Did you know the perch was hollow? I saw Amos Bell remove it last winter. That made 2 pieces of required knowledge. The hollow perch and the possible existence of the wall shaft. Jonah Bell was last. You typed the insurance description for the poison? Wolfe asked. Yes. Did you see the bottle? Yes. Did you open it? Numbered. Did you know the maintenance shaft existed? I found an old repair bill for it 2 years ago. Yeard leaned forward. You told us you knew nothing about the shaft. I had forgotten the bill until you found the panel. You forgot a passage connecting the room where you worked to the room where a man was murdered. I never saw it. The bill called it an air channel. Did you know the perch could fire a dart? Could you have guessed? Jonah looked at the hollow tube. Anyon could. Anyon who knew it was hollow, I said. Mara knew the poison and the hidden compartments, but denied. Knowing the shaft, Edwin knew the perch and had access to the house plans, but denied studying the passage. Jonah knew the poison records, the perch, and the old air channel bill, but denied connecting them. Each possessed part of the required knowledge. Each denied possessing the whole. Grant telephoned from Riddle Street. He had found a thin brass sleeve hidden beneath the felt lining of the cage base. It was shaped like the missing perch, but was solid rather than hollow. A false perch. The murderer had removed Gideon's hollow perch, extracted the evidence, and replaced it with the solid copy so the cage would appear complete during the day. After Gideon was killed, the false perch was taken away, leaving the obvious gap. Who could manufacture the copy? Reed asked. Almost Bell could. Jonah had access to his father's workshop. Edwin's museum employed metal workers. Mara had purchased restoration materials for Gideon. Again, 3 roads. But the solid sleeve carried one useful mark, a stamped number beneath its end cap. -17. Edwin Ash recognized it. That is a museum workshop number. Reed looked at him. Ash removed his spectacles. The workshop records will identify who ordered it. They had better, Reed said. The museum register showed that the brass sleeve had been requested 6 weeks earlier under the description replacement support for Rook mechanical cage. The order bore Mara Rook's signature. Mara stared at the copy. I never signed that. The signature resembled hers, but 2 letters had been formed incorrectly. A skilled forger had copied her hand without understanding its habits. Wolfe examined the order. Who had access to examples of Miss Rook's signature? Goodwin, Mara said. Jonah, everyone handling the collection records. Reed was losing patience. Every fact points to the same 3 people. No, Wolfe said. Every planted fact points to them. The murderer wants an equal distribution of guilt. What unplanted fact do we have? The timing. The heating system began pushing air from the study toward the archive at 7:15. A thorn fired after that time would rise and miss Gideon. Daniel Pike saw him alive at 7:10. The attack occurred within 5 minutes. Who knew the heating schedule? Wolfe asked. Jonah answered. Ruth Calder controlled it. Ruth had not been named among the 3 obvious suspects. Reed's eyes narrowed. Wolfe continued. Someone familiar with the collection knew the poison and hollow perch. Someone familiar with the house knew the vent and heating schedule. You have assumed one person possessed all that knowledge. 2 people? I asked, possibly. Or one person obtained the information from the others while encouraging each to conceal a harmless secret. Reed looked at Mara, Edwin, and Jonah. They were no longer merely suspects. They were also sources from whom the murderer might have collected the pieces of a plan. Dr. Hale packed the poison fragments into his case. The attack required precision, he said. A breath too weak would fail. A breath too strong might shatter the thorn. Could a woman do it? Reed asked. Certainly. Could an older woman? Hale glanced toward the front room where Ruth Calder waited. With practice. Wolfe's eyes closed. The murderer practiced, he said. How do you know? Reed asked. The dart case originally held 12 thorns, 10 remain. 1 killed Mr. Rook. 1 was planted beside him. That accounts for all 12. Does it? The planted thorn had poison and wax prepared from the same mixture. Why poison a piece of false evidence unless it had first been intended for use? The murderer had prepared at least 2 poisoned darts because the first attempt might fail. Somewhere in Rook House, there could be a practice target bearing a puncture. I found it that evening in the archive room. A thick catalogue stood on the shelf directly opposite the speaking vent. Its cover carried 3 tiny holes. 2 contained traces of beeswax. The third contained the broken point of a blackthorn dart. Inside the catalogue, the damaged page described a single object, the Ash shipping seal, donated by Edwin Ash. Someone had practiced the silent attack upon Edwin's name before using it to kill Gideon Rook. Chapter 6:3, Convenient Lies by Sunday Morning. Inspector Silas Reed had 3 liars and no murderer. That was his description, delivered in Nero Wolfe's office while Wolfe sat behind his desk with a glass of beer. I was at mine, and the incomplete birdcage stood beneath a white cloth near the bookshelves. Mara lied about her debts, Reed said. Edwin lied about handling the poisoned collection. Jonah lied about Gideon trusting him. Wolfe poured his beer. A lie is not improved merely by attaching murder to it. One of them knew the poison, the hollow perch, the speaking vent, and the house routine. Then discover which lie conceals those facts. Reed had brought the three of them. Mara Rook entered first. She took the red leather chair and placed her handbag beside her feet. Reed opened a bank file. "You owe $38,000. 34, Mara said. "Your creditors disagree. They include interest. You told me you had no financial difficulties. I did not consider my finances relevant to my uncle's murder. You expected to inherit. Number Gideon's current will leaves you $5,000. Mara's mouth tightened. Then money was not my motive. You believed he might change it. I knew he had changed it. Reed produced another document. Gideon's new will had been found that morning inside a hollow wooden base beneath a cheap mantel clock. Mara had been right about her uncle's habit of hiding valuable papers inside worthless objects. There were left her $50,000 and directed Gideon's lawyer to settle her debts. Wolfe asked, "When did you learn of it?" "Last week. Uncle told me he would help if I stopped borrowing. Why conceal your debts?" "Because Owen Rook would use them to challenge the will. He has been waiting for proof that Gideon's family were irresponsible." "Did you kill your uncle before he could sign the document?" "He signed it 3 days ago." Reed had confirmed the signatures and witnesses. The will was genuine. Mara had lied because public debt embarrassed her and threatened the inheritance Gideon had already granted. His death did not increase what she would receive. "What were you doing between 7:10 and 7:15? Wolfe asked. "In the downstairs collection room with Beatrice." "Continuously." Number Beatrice left briefly to speak with Ruth. "How briefly?" 2 or 3 minutes. "Long enough for you to reach the archive, not through the hall without being seen, but through a service stair." Mara looked at him. "I did not use it." Her lie about money had become less useful as a murder motive, but her 5-minute gap remained. Goodwin Ash replaced her in the red chair. Dr. Hale had found Edwin's fingerprints on the South American poison cabinet. Despite Edwin's claim that Gideon alone opened it during the museum inspection. "I handled the bottle," Ash admitted. "Why deny it?" Reed asked. "Because Gideon accused me of breaking its wax seal. I examined the container to determine whether the poison was still safe. I wore gloves at first, then removed them to inspect the stopper." "Did you take any poison?" "Number, did you know it remained active?" "Yes." That answer sat heavily. Reed placed photographs on Wolfe's desk. They showed a damaged display cabinet in the ground. Floor gallery. Edwin's fingerprints appeared inside a newly repaired brass hinge. The repair resin began setting at 7:05, Reed said. Martha Crane saw Ash, working at 7:10. At 7:17, the resin had hardened around his thumbprint. Grant reproduced the drying time. Wolfe examined the photographs. "You are establishing his presence downstairs during the 5-minute murder interval." "Yes." The cabinet door could not be opened after the resin hardened without breaking the repair. Ash's fingerprints are sealed beneath it. Goodwin had handled the poisoned artifacts and lied about them, but he had been downstairs repairing the display when the dart was fired through the speaking vent. "Could another person have completed the repair?" Wolfe asked. Number Ash's thumb remained pressed beneath the hinge while the resin set. Martha saw him withdraw it at 7:16. I said, "That is devotion to museum work." Ash looked at his bandaged thumb. "Gideon demanded the repair before dinner." "Did he often demand inconvenient tasks?" Wolfe asked. "Constantly. Then perhaps he unintentionally supplied you with an alibi." Goodwin looked relieved. Wolfe added, "For the firing of the dart, not for preparing the poison, forging Mara's signature, stealing the cipher, or arranging the recording." The relief left. Jonah Bell came next. Reed placed a metal box on my desk. It contained half-burned letters recovered from Gideon's fireplace. Most had been written by Jonah. One surviving paragraph read, "You cannot accuse me of missing purchases when Mr. Pike approves every payment." I entered the items exactly as they were supplied. "If you expose me before the board, I will produce the records you ordered me to conceal." Another, written by Gideon, said, 3 objects were paid for and never entered this house. You signed the catalogue. At 10, you will explain where they went." Reed looked at Jonah. "You said Gideon trusted you completely. You argued over missing purchases." "Yes. Did you steal them?" Number Daniel Pike ordered me to create catalogue entries before the objects arrived. They never arrived. Where did the money go? I don't know. Who benefited? Pike handled the payments. Daniel Pike had been found unconscious on the murder night, tied behind the furnace with red silk. He had looked like a victim from the moment we found him, which was not proof that he was one, Wolfe asked. Why burn the letters? I didn't. They were in the study fireplace. Gideon burned them. Then why were only the portions accusing you preserved? Jonah stared at him. Wolfe continued. Summonee selected the letters, burned their harmless sections, and left the accusations readable. Another arranged clue, I said. Reed frowned. Everything cannot be planted. Everything need not be. The best false evidence contains truth. Mr. Bell did argue with Gideon. That made the letters useful. Reed produced the final item. It was a wax cylinder found inside a gramophone cabinet in the archive room. The police had overlooked it during the first search because the cylinder was hidden beneath a stack of blank recording rolls. Grant noticed that one wrapper contained no manufacturer's mark. Reed placed the cylinder on a machine supplied by Amos Bell. The needle settled. Jonah's voice entered the office. Item 41. Silver watch with painted face. Maker uncertain, acquired from the Harrow estate. The recording continued with catalogue descriptions. At one point, Ruth Calder's voice could be heard faintly through the archive door. Do you want tea, Jonah? The recorded Jonah did not pause. He continued. Item 42, brass cage with silver finch. Ruth had not heard a living man answer her. She had heard a recording made earlier. Reed stopped the machine. The cylinder lasts 28 minutes. It began shortly after 7. A clockwork attachment played it automatically. Jonah's face was white. You created an alibi before Gideon was murdered, Reed said. Number, that is your voice. I made the recording at 6 because Gideon ordered me to. Why? He said he was testing the speaking vent. You previously claimed he was testing whether Ruth could recognize a recording. That is what he told me. Where were you while it played? Jonah looked toward his father. Answer, Reed said. In Gideon's collection office. Doing what? Opening the bronze ship. Reed stared at him. Jonah continued. My message said evidence against my father had been hidden inside it. I wanted to find it before the 10 o'clock meeting. So while your recorded voice supplied an alibi in the archive, you were stealing evidence downstairs. I was protecting my father. Amos Bell spoke quietly. You should have told me. I thought Gideon intended to accuse you of making the forged mechanisms. Did he? The paper inside the ship listed Edwin's name, not yours. That explains why you replaced it, Wolfe said. Jonah nodded. Who knew you had recorded the cylinder? Wolfe asked. Gideon. My father saw me carry the machine upstairs. Ruth may have heard us. Daniel Pike? He entered while I was recording. He asked why I was dictating the same entries twice. Reed's head came up. Pike knew the voice would be played later. He may have guessed. What about Mara? She passed the archive at 6:20. Win. He had already gone downstairs. Wolfe leaned back. The recorded voice was not originally created as an alibi for murder. Gideon arranged it as part of his trap. He wanted the household to believe Jonah remained in the archive while Gideon observed who searched the 4 selected objects, I said. But the murderer took advantage of it. Indeed, the killer knew Jonah's voice would continue from 7 until 7:28. That allowed someone to enter the maintenance shaft from the archive while Ruth believed Jonah remained behind the closed door. Reed paced once across the office. Mara knew Gideon was setting traps. Edwin knew the cage contained evidence. Jonah made the recording. Yet Gideon himself planned the voice, Wolfe said. Summoner learned the plan and converted it into an alibi for a silent attack. Reed turned to Jonah, who mounted the clockwork timer. I did. Who set it to 7? Gideon. Who could change the time? Anion with the timer key. Where was the key kept? In my father's workshop. Amos Bell looked toward his son. 3 copies existed. Who had them? Reed asked. One was mine. One belonged to Jonah. The third was made for Gideon. Where is Gideon's copy? It had not been found on his body, in his desk, or in his safe. The murderer had taken it. Grant telephoned from Riddle Street before Reed could continue. He had examined the gramophone cabinet and found a smear of the same beeswax used to hold poison on the thorn. Embedded in the wax was a single grey thread. Ruth Calder wore a grey uniform. The evidence now pointed toward the senior housekeeper. Wolfe listened to Grant's report and grunted. Mrs. Calder handled candles and polishing wax throughout the house. A grey fibre near wax proves little. She controlled the heating schedule, Reed said. She knew the speaking vent. She knew when Jonah's voice began. She could move through the house unnoticed. And she volunteered the fact of the missing perch, Wolfe replied. A guilty woman might offer one fact to conceal another. True. Reed called Ruth into the office and showed her the cylinder. She listened to her own recorded question. I never entered the archive room, she said. I asked through the closed door. Did you know the gramophone was playing? Number. Who told you Jonah was dictating? Daniel Pike, he said. Mr. Bell was not to be disturbed. That was the second time Pike's name had appeared at the edge of the arrangement. He had known Jonah recorded the notes. He had told Ruth the voice was live. He had access to Gideon's correspondence, safe collection payments and workshop. He had also been found unconscious in a position calculated to remove suspicion. Wolfe asked Reed to bring Pike to the office. Reed telephoned Riddle Street. Daniel Pike was gone. A patrolman had been stationed outside his bedroom. At 11:30, Pike had asked to use the washroom. He entered it and never came out. The window stood open. On the sill lay the missing timer key. Beside it was a grey thread from Ruth Calder's uniform. Reed put down the receiver. Pike has run. Wolfe poured the remainder of his beer. Or someone has repeated the performance used in the drawing room. You think he is still in the house? I think Mr. Pike has already been displayed once as an injured innocent. His disappearance may be a second display. 3 convenient lies had concealed debt, mishandled poison, and missing purchases. The recorded voice had concealed an empty archive room. Now Daniel Pike's open window concealed either an escape or another act in the murderer's arrangement. The cage was not the only object in Rook House designed to misdirect the eye. So far, every person had supplied a secret. Only one had turned the secrets of all the others into a plan. Chapter 7. The bird's last song, Daniel Pike, was still missing when Inspector Silas Reed wound the silver finch for the 3rd time. We were in Gideon Rook's study. The cage stood on the desk where the murder had begun. Its brass door remained open, while its silver cup, lower perch, and 6th reed had been removed. Rain pressed against the windows, and the loose papers near the eastern wall trembled whenever air passed through the speaking vent. Reed turned the winding key and released it. The finch lifted its silver head. One note sounded. There was a short pause, then a second note. The third came quickly. The fourth was longer and lower. Then the bird stopped. That isn't the song we heard before, I said. Amos Bell examined the mechanism. Someone altered the musical cylinder. When Reed asked. I don't know. Yesterday, it produced 5 steady notes. Could the damage have worsened? This was deliberate. Nell Ward stood beside the ledger table with 4 collection books open before her. She had spent the morning comparing the cage's construction with Gideon's inventory numbers. Wind it again, she said. Reed did. The same 4 uneven notes sounded, separated by different intervals. Nell tapped her pencil against the ledger. 4, 9/16, and 22. What are they? Reed asked. The pauses, 4 short beats before the first note, 9 before the second, 16 before the third, and 22 before the fourth. She turned the ledger toward us. Beside 4 entries, Gideon had written the same numbers in blue pencil: 4 ivory tower 9, silver prayer box, 16 jeweled watch, 22 mechanical owl. All 4 objects had been identified as forgeries. Reed looked at Amos Bell. The finch remembered their ledger numbers. The timing cylinder did, Bell replied. Musical reeds create the notes. but the cylinder determines when each reed sounds. Removing one reed changes the music, not the spacing of the remaining movements. The bird's mechanical memory, Nell said. Gideon had expected the thief to remove the written proof. He had therefore altered the finch's timing cylinder to preserve the 4 catalogue numbers. I telephoned Wolfe. He was in the plant rooms and made Theodore fetch him from the orchids. His annoyance lasted until I gave him the 4 numbers. "Who purchased those objects?" he asked. I checked the ledgers. Each entry carried the same purchasing agent's initials, J.B. Jonah Bell. Wolfe said, "Bring the finch, the ledgers, and Mr. Bell here. Reed may prefer headquarters. Then he may solve the case there." Reed preferred West 35th Street. An hour later, Jonah sat in the red leather chair. His father stood behind him. Mara Rook, Edwin Ash, Nell Ward, and Ruth Calder occupied the remaining seats. Daniel Pike's chair was empty. Wolfe had eaten lunch, inspected the finch without touching it, and placed the 4 ledgers in a row on his desk. "Mr. Bell," he said, "you told Inspector Reed that Daniel Pike ordered you to catalogue objects before they arrived." "He did. These 4 arrived." Jonah looked at the ledgers. "Copies arrived." "You purchased them." "I acted for Mr. Rook." "You signed the purchase agreements." "Mr. Pike approved the payments." "From whom did you purchase the ivory tower?" "A dealer named Walter Stone." "No such dealer existed." "I did not know that." "The address belonged to a storage room rented by you." Jonah's face tightened. Reed placed 4 cancelled checks on Wolfe's desk. "The payments passed through accounts opened under false names," he said. All 4 accounts led to Jonah. Amos Bell gripped the back of his son's chair. "Is that true?" Jonah did not answer. Wolfe continued. "You sold 4 genuine objects from Gideon's collection and replaced them with copies. Number, then explain the finch." Jonah looked toward the silver bird. Wolfe wound it. 4 uneven notes entered the office. "The intervals identify the 4 forged objects," Wolfe said. "Mr. Rook altered the cylinder after discovering your purchases. He placed the complete proof inside the hollow lower perch. He then gave you a false message claiming evidence against your father was hidden inside the bronze ship." Jonah's eyes moved toward Amos. "You opened the ship," Wolfe continued. "That was the act Mr. Rook expected. But while searching the collection, you also discovered the cage's paper seal. You realized it contained the true evidence." "I did not kill him. I have not accused you of murder." Yeard leaned forward. "Did you remove the document from the perch?" Jonah remained silent. Wolfe said, "You have already admitted entering the collection office while your recorded voice played in the archive. You had 28 minutes without an observable presence. The maintenance shaft connected the archive to the study. You used it." Jonah looked at his father again. Amos Bell said, "Tell the truth." Jonah's voice was low. "I entered the shaft at 7:08. Ruth Calder inhaled. "Why?" Reed asked. "I had opened the bronze ship and found the list naming Edwin. I knew Gideon was setting traps. I wanted to know what he had hidden in the cage. Was Gideon alive?" "Yes, I heard him moving in the study." "What happened?" "I reached the inspection panel behind the bookcase. The cage was on the desk. Gideon had turned toward the window. I opened the panel slightly and waited." "Did he see you?" "Number, how did you remove the perch?" "I didn't." "Not then. I watched Gideon open the cage himself. He removed the lower perch, placed a rolled paper inside it, and returned it to the brackets. Then he locked the study door. He sat at his desk and began reading. "The killer fired at approximately 7:12, Reed said. Jonah nodded. "I heard a breath inside the shaft behind me." No one moved. "You were not alone in the wall?" Reed asked. "Number, who was there?" "I couldn't see. The shaft was dark. Someone was near the archive end." "What did you hear?" "A metal tube scrape against the vent, then a sharp breath. Gideon raised one hand to his neck and fell forward." "Why didn't you call for help?" "I panicked." "You watched a man murdered and thought first of yourself." "I thought of the paper." "That was honest enough to be ugly," Jonah continued. I entered the study through the movable bookcase. Gideon was still breathing, but he could not speak. I took the perch, removed the paper, and returned through the shaft. "You left him to die," Mara said. Jonah looked at her. "Yes." "What did the document contain?" Reed asked. "Purchase records, account numbers, and letters proving I sold the original objects." "Where is it?" "I burned it." Wolfe shook his head. Jonah looked at him. "You are a thief, Mr. Bell, but not a destroyer of valuable leverage. Those papers could protect you against Daniel Pike, who approved the payments, or Edwin Ashe, who authenticated the histories. You preserved them." "I burned them, Archie." I went to the front room and returned with Jonah's brown collection case, taken from Rook House under Reed's warrant. Its metal corners appeared solid. Amos Bell examined one and found a concealed spring. Inside the hollow corner was a tightly rolled document, tied with blue thread and sealed with Gideon's red wax, the paper from the missing perch. Reed opened it. It contained bank transfers, forged purchase histories, and letters exchanged between Jonah and Daniel Pike. The letters proved that Jonah obtained the copies and arranged the substitutions. But Pike had selected the genuine objects, approved their sale, and received most of the money. Jonah had not worked alone. Reed finished reading. Pike directed the thefts. "Yes," Jonah said. He said, "Gideon would never discover them." "Why did you keep the evidence?" "To force Pike to protect me." "Did Pike know you had it?" "I told him after Gideon died." "When?" "At 8:30, before the police found me." I said, "Pike was supposedly unconscious behind the furnace." "He wasn't unconscious when I found him. He was tying his own wrists. He told me someone had attacked him, but the wound above his temple was shallow. He wanted to look like another victim." That explained Pike's convenient position. "Did he take the cup and sixth reed?" Reed asked. "I don't know. When I entered the study, the cage door was already open, but the cup and reed were still there. I took only the perch. That divided the theft. Jonah removed the hollow perch and its evidence immediately after the murder. Someone else later entered the locked study and stole the silver cup and sixth reed." "Who knew the maintenance shaft remained open?" Wolfe asked. "Pike," Jonah replied. "He saw me leave it." "From where?" "The archive room. He was standing beside the gramophone." Ruth Calder said. Then he knew the voice was a recording. "Yes." Reed stood. Pike prepared the timer, played the cylinder, fired the dart, and later tied himself behind the furnace. Jonah shook his head. "I never saw who fired. Pike could have been in the archive, but so could someone else." Wolfe lifted one finger. "Do not hurry, Inspector. Mr. Pike is implicated in theft, false alibis, and staged injury. Murder still requires proof. He fled, or was removed." Reed looked toward Jonah. "You have admitted stealing evidence from a dying man." "Yes." "And participating in the sale of 4 genuine objects." "Yes." "You're under arrest." Jonah rose. Amos Bell did not look at him. Before Reed took him away, Jonah turned toward the silver finch. "I changed the musical cylinder." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "When 2 weeks ago, Gideon ordered me to set the 4 intervals. I thought they were only catalogue references. He said if anyone stole the written proof, the bird would remember." "Why did it sing 5 steady notes yesterday?" "Because someone reset the speed governor. When Amos wound it today, the governor slipped back to the marked position." Amos examined the mechanism. Jonah was right. A small lever had been temporarily fixed with clear gum, the same restoration gum used to repair the cage's broken paper seal. The murderer had tried to erase the finch's mechanical memory, just as the written evidence had been removed from the hollow perch. But the repair failed. Gideon's final clue survived in 4 uneven notes. The bird had not named the murderer. It had named the thief who stole its secret. As Reed escorted Jonah from the office, the silver finch remained on Wolfe's desk with its wings folded. Its last song had recovered the evidence hidden inside the missing perch. It had also proved that Daniel Pike's disappearance mattered more than anyone's alibi. Chapter 8. Dust in the Archive. Jonah Bell spent Sunday night in police custody, where he had time to consider the difference between stealing evidence and being accused of murder with it. On Monday morning, Inspector Silas Reed returned to Rook House with Grant, Nell Ward and me. Wolfe remained at the brownstone because the archive room contained dust, narrow passages, and no chair capable of receiving him with dignity. The wax cylinder holding Jonah's recorded voice had been removed, but the gramophone remained on the archive table. Behind it, the brass speaking grill connected to the maintenance shaft and Gideon's study. Reed lowered himself beside the wall. Fresh scratches marked the floor beneath the vent. They formed two parallel lines about 11 inches long. The missing perch was placed here, Nell said. Grant illuminated them. Fine brass dust lay in the grooves and upon the top of a wooden stool. Summerton rested a brass tube on the stool while aiming through the vent, Reed said. The stool stood directly beneath the opening. A person could kneel in the maintenance shaft, support the hollow perch upon it, and fire the poisoned thorn toward Gideon's chair. On one stool leg was a smear of dark oil. Grant compared it with oil taken from the birdcage hinges. It matches. Jonah repaired the cage, Reed said. He had oil on his glove. The glove had been collected after Jonah's arrest. A dark stain covered the thumb and first finger. Nell examined the speaking grill. The lower screw was removed recently. The killer widened the opening so the perch would fit. What tool was used? I asked. Something narrow with a square edge. Jonah's collection case contained a square-ended watchmaker's tool. Evidence was not merely pointing toward him, it was waving both arms. Reed telephoned headquarters and ordered Jonah brought to Riddle Street. While we waited, Grant compared the brass tube found behind the furnace with the old exhibition photograph. The measurements were close, but not exact. The furnace tube is shorter by half an inch, he said. Amos Bell, summoned from his workshop, examined it. This is not the original perch. Reed looked at him. You identified it as the missing one. I identified its design. I did not have the cage beside me for comparison. The blood was planted, and now the tube is false. It is an unnumbered practice tube. It resembles the museum. Made R-17 sleeve, but it is hollow, slightly shorter, and was manufactured separately. The false tube had served as practice equipment or planted evidence. The true hollow perch remained missing. Jonah arrived under guard at 11. He wore a dark suit, but no overcoat. His face showed that the night had not been restful. Reed displayed the glove, brass dust, stool, and scratches. You entered the maintenance shaft, he said. I admitted that. You handled the cage. I admitted taking the perch. Your tool removed the vent screw. Number the grill was already loose. You rested the perch on this stool. I never touched the stool. Then how did oil from your glove reach it? Summerton placed it there. Goodwin ash? Reed asked. Jonah looked toward the archive door. He had access to the room and museum workshop. He could have made the false tube and planted the dust. Could he plant the oil from your glove before we took it from you? He could take oil from the cage. It is the same substance. Reed's jaw tightened. Your answer to every fact is Goodwin ash. Because every fact against me was arranged. Except your theft of 4 genuine objects. Jonah looked away. Except your recorded alibi. Gideon ordered the recording. Except your presence in the wall while he died. I went there to steal the evidence. I did not fire the thorn. It was an unattractive defense, but unattractive does not mean impossible. Nell had begun examining the contents of the archive closet. It held walking sticks, rain capes, and 3 umbrellas used by members of the household when crossing the courtyard. One umbrella leaned behind the others. Its black handle bore Jonah's initials. Nell lifted it and frowned. This is unusually heavy. Jonah turned. That was not there yesterday. Reed took the umbrella. Its wooden shaft was thicker than normal, and the metal tip appeared new. Amos Bell unscrewed the handle. Inside the hollow shaft was the true brass perch. It had been cleaned on the outside. The 7 cipher holes remained visible along its underside. One end still carried traces of Gideon's red sealing wax and blue thread. Dr. Tobias Hale examined the interior at the police laboratory. The arrow poison remained inside. The thorn that killed Gideon had passed through it. Reed placed the umbrella on the archive table. Your initials, your umbrella, the murder weapon. Jonah stared at it. I left that umbrella in the entrance hall on the murder night. Convenient. Anyone could have taken it. You entered the shaft and stole the perch. Yes, you hid it inside your umbrella. Number, what did you do with it? I wrapped it in catalogue cloth and placed it in my collection case. The case contained Gideon's papers but no perch. I returned to the archive after the police arrived. The perch was gone from the case. I assumed someone had taken it. Why didn't you report that? Jonah laughed without humor. Report that the murder weapon had disappeared from the bag where I hid stolen evidence. Why preserve the papers but abandon the tube? I intended to use the papers against Pike. The perch only connected me to the study. Reed looked at the umbrella. Then someone took the perch from your case, hid it in your umbrella, and returned the umbrella to this closet. Yes. Who knew where your case was? Daniel Pike, my father. Ruth saw me carrying it. Edwin may have seen it. Again, the answer spread suspicion through the house. I telephoned Wolfe. He listened while I described the brass dust, oil, stool, false tube, Jonah's glove, heavy umbrella, and poisoned original perch. The paper from the perch was no longer inside, he asked. Number, we recovered it from the hollow corner of Jonah's case yesterday. Then the person who placed the perch in the umbrella knew the document had already been removed. Jonah knew. Obviously. Who else? Daniel Pike. Jonah says he told Pike after the murder. Mr. Pike remains missing. Yes. Then find him. Reed has half the department looking. Half the department usually looks where a fugitive might go. Mr. Pike may be where a victim would be placed. You still think his disappearance was staged by someone else? I think the open window was staged. Whether Mr. Pike staged it himself remains undecided. What about the umbrella? Who selected it? It bears Jonah's initials. That is not an answer. Who ordinarily distributes umbrellas in that house? Ruth Calder did. She kept the hall closet and assigned each umbrella to its owner. Jonah's initials had been added in white paint 2 years earlier. When questioned, Ruth said the umbrella had been missing since the murder night. Who reported it missing? Reed asked. No one. I noticed the empty space while cleaning Saturday morning. Why didn't you tell us? Because an umbrella seemed unimportant. In Rook House, apparently every unimportant object had applied for promotion. Wolfe asked through the telephone, was the umbrella wet? I checked. The cloth was dry, but rust. Colored water remained inside the metal tip. Grant tested it. The water contained coal dust. The basement furnace room had coal dust. Daniel Pike had been found there. The true perch had traveled from the cage to the maintenance shaft, from the shaft to Jonah's collection case, from the case to the furnace room, and finally into Jonah's umbrella. At least 2 people had handled it after Gideon's death. Jonah took it from the study, I said. Pike could have taken it from Jonah's case and hidden it in the umbrella while staging his own attack in the furnace room. Indeed, Wolfe replied. But why leave the umbrella in the archive? To ensure the police found it near the vent, and to connect the murder weapon to Jonah's recorded voice. The evidence had been built in layers. The scratches and brass dust proved a tube had been used at the vent. The poisoned perch proved it had fired the dart. The oil connected it to the birdcage. The glove and umbrella connected it to Jonah. Every piece was true. The conclusion they offered could still be false. Reed searched the archive closet again. Behind the umbrella rack, Grant found a torn corner of brown cloth, carrying a small dark red stain. It matched Daniel Pike's coat. A narrow trail of coal dust led from the closet to the service stairs. At the bottom of those stairs stood a locked storage cupboard. The police had opened twice before. It contained old exhibition stands and empty wooden crates. This time Nell noticed one crate was shorter inside than outside. We lifted the false bottom. Daniel Pike lay beneath it, unconscious but alive. His hands were tied with blue thread. A blackthorn dart had been placed on his chest, but there was no puncture wound. When Dr. Hart revived him, Pike whispered that someone had attacked him near the washroom window. "Who?" Reed asked. Pike opened his eyes. "Jonah Bell." Jonah stared at him. "That is a lie." Pike looked toward the umbrella containing the poisoned perch. "Then ask him," he said, "why Gideon wrote his name inside the bird." The silver finch had already revealed 4 forged objects. According to Pike, it concealed one more name. And Jonah Bell's convenient lies were no longer protecting only a thief. Chapter 9. The Trap at Midnight. Nero Wolfe designed the midnight trap without leaving his chair. Inspector Silas Reed objected to nearly every part of it, which did not prevent him from using it. At 4 that afternoon, Reed announced to the household at number 20, 4 Riddle Street, that the silver finch contained a second copy of Gideon Rook's missing evidence. He said the bird would be opened at midnight in the locked study, with witnesses present. The statement was a lie. There was no second copy inside the finch. Amos Bell had examined every screw, spring, reed, and plate. The bird contained only its musical mechanism and the altered timing cylinder that identified the 4 forged objects. "The murderer does not know that," Wolfe said when Reed telephoned from the brownstone. "He knows Gideon concealed evidence inside ordinary objects and created more than one safeguard. He cannot risk permitting the bird to be opened publicly," Reed asked. "What if he does nothing? Then we lose a few hours. What if he destroys the bird before midnight? Then we gain a murderer." Reed disliked the simplicity because it belonged to Wolfe. The finch and cage were returned to Gideon's study at 9. 2 uniformed officers guarded the hall door. Another watched the archive entrance. Reed placed a 4th man at the service stairs. The obvious approaches were covered. The maintenance shaft was not. At 11:30, Nell Ward and I entered the study through the library door. The cage stood on Gideon's desk beneath a single lamp. Its brass door had been closed. The silver finch rested upon its upper perch, looking more confident than I felt. Reed checked the windows and locked the study door from the inside. "The murderer used the shaft once," he said. "Why assume he'll use it again?" "Because the hall is guarded," Nell replied. "And because a man usually trusts the road that worked before," I added. Reed placed Nell behind the eastern curtain. He took the western one. I entered the maintenance shaft through the movable bookcase and waited beside the inspection panel. The arrangement gave me dust, darkness, and the first opportunity to meet anyone coming from the archive. Nell whispered, "What if Jonah isn't the murderer? Then someone else will improve our education." Reed hissed for silence. The clock on Gideon's mantel showed 11:40. Nothing happened. At 11:50, pipes clicked inside the wall as the heating system slowed for the night. The air current through the vent weakened. At 11:55, I heard metal touch brick near the archive end of the shaft. Someone had entered. The movement was slow and practiced. Cloth brushed the wall. A floorboard gave one soft complaint, then stopped. A narrow beam of light appeared. The figure moved sideways through the shaft, carrying a hooded lamp. When he came within 6 feet, I recognized Jonah Bell. I remained behind the inspection frame. Jonah passed without seeing me. He carried a small leather tool roll and wore black gloves. His right coat pocket sagged with something heavy. At 11:58, he reached the study panel. He listened. The room remained silent. Jonah opened the panel, slipped into the study, and pushed the bookcase just far enough to pass. He approached the desk. The mantel clock began striking midnight. On the first stroke, Jonah opened the cage. On the second, he removed the silver finch. On the third, Reed and Nell stepped from behind the curtains. "Put it down," Reed said. Jonah froze with the bird in both hands. The clock continued striking. On the 6th stroke, I came through the bookcase and blocked the shaft. Jonah glanced at the locked study door, the windows, and the opening behind me. He had entered his own locked room and discovered it occupied. "I was protecting the evidence," he said. Reed drew his revolver, placed the bird on the desk. Jonah obeyed. Nell took the leather tool roll. It contained screwdrivers, a spring cutter, a small hammer, and a bottle of clear restoration gum. The same gum had been used to repair the broken paper seal beneath the cage and hold the finch's speed governor in the wrong position. Reed searched Jonah's coat. The heavy object was the missing bottle of South American arrow poison. Jonah looked at it as though surprised by its loyalty. "You planted that," he said. "On you?" Reed asked. "Someone put it in my coat before I came upstairs. You entered a guarded study through a hidden shaft to destroy a bird, but the poison is the part you object to. I did not intend to destroy it." "What did you intend?" "To remove the evidence." "There is no evidence inside." Jonah stared at Reed. "The second copy was a trap," Nell said. The truth reached him slowly. "You lied." "I'm a police inspector," Reed replied. "It is included in some investigations." Jonah's face changed. The fear did not disappear. It hardened into calculation. "You have caught me attempting theft. Nothing more." Reed opened the tool roll and held up the spring cutter. "This tool matches marks inside the speaking vent. The gum matches the cage seal. The poison came from Gideon's cabinet. Your recording supplied the alibi. All known before tonight. Your umbrella contained the murder weapon, planted. You knew the Finch's timing cylinder might preserve a second copy. Everyone heard your announcement, but only the murderer knew the bird had to be destroyed before we opened it." Jonah looked toward the maintenance shaft. He was considering a run at me. I hoped he would, since waiting in dust deserved compensation. He decided against it. Nell returned the Finch to the cage. "Why did you change the speed governor?" she asked. Jonah said nothing. "To hide the 4 ledger numbers," she continued. "You knew Gideon had made the bird remember the counterfeit purchases. He ordered me to alter the cylinder. That proves nothing. You made the 4 purchases. Pike approved them." Yeard moved closer. "Daniel Pike says you attacked him, hid him beneath the archive cupboard, and staged his disappearance. Pike is a thief and a liar. So are you. I did not kill Gideon." I picked up Jonah's hooded lamp. Around its handle was a narrow brass ring. Fresh scratches marked one side. "This ring fits the speaking vent," I said. Nell examined it. It would hold the hollow perch steady while a dart was fired. Jonah's eyes followed the ring. Reed noticed. "You made a support, so the blowpipe would not move. Number you practiced on the catalogue opposite the vent. Number you prepared 2 poisoned thorns. Number you played your recorded voice, entered the shaft, and waited until Gideon sat at his desk. Number the word had become automatic." Reed opened the poison bottle. Inside its stopper was a small folded square of paper, protected by wax. Grant had not found it during the earlier search because the bottle had been missing. Nell unfolded it with gloved fingers. The paper contained measurements: vent to chair, 3 feet, 4 inches. Air current begins. 7:15. Use upper opening, aim below left ear. The writing was Jonah's. He stopped denying. For several seconds, the only sound was the clock settling after midnight. Reed said, "Tell it." Jonah leaned against Gideon's desk. He discovered the purchases. "Begin earlier." Pike and I sold the originals. He found private buyers. I obtained copies and entered them in the catalogue. Edwin signed the ownership reports without knowing they were false. "Why did Gideon suspect you?" "The mechanical owl broke. My father opened it and found the later maker's stamp." Gideon checked the other objects. "He arranged the 10 o'clock meeting." "Yes. He said he would expose me to the museum board and the police. He also threatened to dismiss my father." Amos Bell had not known his son was protecting him with theft, murder, and a collection of lies. "Why use the cage?" Nell asked. Gideon told me he had hidden the full account inside one of 4 objects. I intercepted Marat's messages and learned the cage contained the real evidence. During the afternoon, I opened the cage and temporarily removed the silver cup, hollow perch, and 6th reed. I read the paper, returned the cup and reed, and substituted the solid R-17 sleeve for the hollow perch. So Gideon would not notice anything missing. Why replace the perch with the solid copy? So Gideon would not know I had found it. You forged Mara's signature on the museum workshop order? Yes. You prepared the recording. Gideon ordered the cylinder made as part of his trap. I attached the timer. He thought it would hide my absence while I searched the bronze ship. But you used it to hide your presence in the shaft, Reed said. Jonah nodded. At 7:08, I started the cylinder. Ruth heard my voice. I entered the maintenance passage. Gideon locked his study door and sat down to read. You fired before the heating current began. Yes. Through the hollow brass perch. Yes. Jonah's voice had become flat. The first practice, darts, broke. I made the brass support for the vent. At 7:12 I fired. The thorn struck beneath his ear. He raised his hand but couldn't call out. Then you entered the study. I took the real dart and put another beside him. I opened the cage again and removed the silver cup. 6th read and false R negative, 17 perch, so the police would think the cage itself was involved. Then I returned through the wall. Did Gideon write the message on Wolfe's card? Yes, he had written it earlier. I left it because I thought it pointed toward Edwin Ashe and the stolen seal. You planted Ashe's shoeprint. I pressed his repaired shoe into grey dust that afternoon and transferred the pattern with a wax sheet. Mara's blue fibers, taken from her catalogue chair. Ruth's grey thread, from her sewing basket. The clues pointing in 3 directions, Nell said. Jonah nodded. What about Pike? Reed asked. He knew too much. He helped with the forged purchases, but he threatened to confess after Gideon died. I struck him in the basement and tied him. Later, I moved him beneath the archive cupboard and staged the open window. And your umbrella? I hid the poisoned perch inside it after taking the paper. Reed looked at him. Where is Gideon's proof? Jonah's expression closed. I destroyed it. No, I said. Wolfe said you wouldn't. Jonah gave me a tired smile. Wolfe is not always right. Where is it? Repeated. I will not tell you. You preserved it to control Pike. Perhaps. It proves theft, fraud, and now motive for murder. It also implicates people you have not questioned. Who? Jonah said nothing. Reed handcuffed him. As the officers took Jonah into the hall, he looked once toward the finch. You should melt it, he said. That bird has ruined enough names. After he was gone, Nell inspected the silver bird. The second copy never existed. No, Reed said. But Jonah believed it might. I telephoned Wolfe from Gideon's desk. He confessed to firing the thorn, staging the room, planting evidence and attacking Pike. He refuses to reveal where he hid Gideon's proof. Bring everyone to my office tomorrow evening, Wolfe said. You already have the murderer. We have a confession. We do not have the whole crime. What is missing? The document in the perch, the true part played by Mr. Pike, and the reason Jonah preserved evidence dangerous to himself. He wanted leverage. Against whom? Pike, possibly. But Mr. Pike knew of 4 forged purchases. Jonah says the hidden document implicates others. We shall learn which statement is true. Wolfe disconnected. The trap at midnight had caught Gideon's murderer with the silver finch in his hands. The locked room was explained, the recorded voice exposed, and the poisoned thorn accounted for. Yet, the evidence Gideon died protecting remained hidden. Jonah Bell had confessed to murder. He had not confessed to the whole truth. Chapter 10. What truly escaped the final gathering took place the following evening in Nero Wolfe's office. Inspector Silas Reed sat in the red leather chair. Mara Rook and Beatrice Rook occupied the yellow chairs near the bookshelves. Edwin Ashe sat beside Nell Ward, while Amos Bell remained near the window. Ruth Calder had refused a chair and stood with her hands folded. Daniel Pike was present under police guard. Jonah Bell had been brought from custody and placed where he could see the silver finch. The incomplete cage stood on Wolfe's desk with its brass door open. After Jonah's confession, the police recovered the missing silver cup and 6th musical reed from a locked drawer in his collection office. The poisoned hollow perch had already been removed from his umbrella. All 3 pieces now rested beside the cage. Fritz served coffee to the guests and beer to Wolfe. Once the foam had settled, Wolfe looked toward Reed. "Open the bird." Amos Bell handed Reed a small screwdriver. Reed removed the finch's silver back, lifted its timing cylinder, inspected the space beneath the reeds, and found nothing. "The second copy was bait," he said. "There is no evidence inside." Jonah smiled for the first time that evening. "You built your midnight trap around a lie." "Most traps contain one," I said. "The prey supplies the rest." Reed closed the finch. "We have your confession, your written measurements, the poisoned perch, the recording and the tools you carried into the study. The missing document is no longer needed to prove murder." "Then why bring us here?" Edwin asked. Wolfe placed his glass down. "Because murder is not the only offense requiring resolution. Gideon Rook died to preserve evidence concerning a series of forged artifacts. Mr. Bell confessed to stealing that evidence, but he lied when he claimed to have destroyed it." Jonah's smile remained, though it had less confidence. Wolfe continued. "The document from the hollow perch implicated him in the substitution of 4 objects. It also implicated Daniel Pike and possibly others. Destroying it would remove danger, but it would also remove Jonah's protection against his accomplice." Pike shifted in his chair. "I was not his accomplice." "You approved every payment," Wolfe said. "I handled accounts." Jonah selected the dealers. "You opened false companies under 3 names. That has not been proved." "It will be." Wolfe turned toward Jonah. "You needed a hiding place the police would find, inspect, and then classify incorrectly." Jonah said nothing. "You had already used the cage, finch, hollow perch, umbrella, workshop, and maintenance shaft. Any of them might be searched repeatedly. Your private room and collection case were obvious. A bank box could be traced." Wolfe looked at the gramophone on the table beside me. Only then did Jonah's expression change. "The recording cylinder," Nell said. Reed glanced at her. The wax cylinder containing Jonah's catalogue dictation had been recovered from the archive and played several times. It had established that the voice Ruth heard was recorded rather than live. After that, the police treated it only as part of the false alibi. Wolfe said, "A recording cylinder is hollow." Amos Bell crossed to the machine. He removed the wax roll and examined one end. A thin ring had been cut around the inner surface and resealed with clear restoration gum. Bell inserted a narrow tool and lifted a false inner sleeve. Inside was a tightly rolled document, bound with blue thread. Jonah closed his eyes. Reed opened the paper. It was Gideon Rook's complete report. The first section listed the 4 genuine artifacts Jonah had sold and the copies substituted for them. Attached were photographs of makers' marks, bank transfers, false ownership records, and letters between Jonah and Daniel Pike. The second section concerned Edwin Ashe. Gideon had concluded that Ashe approved the purchases without knowing the artifacts were false. His fault had been professional pride and careless trust, not theft. Ashe removed his spectacles. "I should have examined them myself." "Yes," Wolfe said. "Your negligence gave the thieves respectable ownership histories. Your lies afterward made you appear guilty." The third section cleared Mara Rook. Gideon had used her signature as part of his trap, but had already learned that someone forged it on the museum workshop order. Ruth Calder's name appeared only in notes about the household schedule. Gideon recorded that she controlled the heating system and could identify the cage's original arrangement. That was why Jonah planted her grey thread near the gramophone. The final section concerned Daniel Pike. Reed read it aloud. Pike selected the genuine objects for sale, obtained private buyers, and transferred payment through false accounts. Jonah Bell arranged the copies and altered the collection ledgers. Pike has threatened to expose Bell if I discover the substitutions. Bell has threatened to produce Pike's letters if abandoned. Pike stood. This is the statement of a dead man. Reed signaled to the officer behind him. It is also accompanied by cancelled checks and letters bearing your signature. I did not kill Gideon. No, Wolfe said. You helped create the motive but did not commit the murder. Pike looked toward Jonah. He tried to kill me. Jonah opened his eyes. If I had tried, you would be dead. You struck me twice, tied me behind the furnace, and later hid me beneath a crate. You were preparing to confess. You murdered Gideon and expected me to remain loyal. Jonah leaned forward. You suggested the substitutions, you took most of the money, and you fired the thorn. Reed stepped between them. Mr. Pike will be charged with theft, fraud, conspiracy, and obstruction. Jonah Bell will answer for those offenses and for Gideon Rook's murder. Amos Bell had not moved from the gramophone. He looked at his son. Why hide the proof in your own voice? Jonah's reply was quiet. Once its false purpose was discovered, everyone believed its meaning had been exhausted. The cylinder became evidence of an alibi and therefore ceased to be examined as a container. I said, the same trick as the birdcage. Show everyone one secret so they stop looking for another. The governing principle of the entire crime, Wolfe replied. Jonah had created layers of explanation. The poisoned thorn suggested the mechanical bird had fired it. The open door suggested the silver cup was the chief object stolen. The missing perch looked worthless until it became a cipher key and blowpipe. The recording appeared to prove Jonah was in the archive, then appeared merely to prove his alibi was false. The open window suggested Pike had escaped. The planted fibers divided suspicion among Mara, Edwin, and Ruth. Each discovery offered an explanation designed to end inquiry one step too soon. Mara looked toward the cage. What did Uncle mean when he wrote that the open door was false? Wolfe answered. He meant the open door did not mark an escape. It marked concealment. The murderer wanted everyone to ask what had left the cage, while the true weapon and proof were hidden in parts no one valued. The perch and reed, she said, and the recording cylinder. Goodwin Ash asked, what about Judge Rook's shipping seal? The sixth reed recovered from Jonah's locked drawer contained the copied words Ash, seal, 17. Gideon's report established that Judge Samuel Rook had indeed stolen the carved seal and sold it to Edwin's grandfather. Ash Hall would lose its donor's name, but Edwin was not charged. The museum agreed to return the seal to the family from whom it had been taken. The 4 genuine artifacts were traced through Pike's account records. 3 were recovered from private buyers. The 4th, the mechanical owl, was found in a bank vault, registered under Jonah's false company. Beatrice inherited Gideon's lawful collection. At Mara's request, the forged copies were retained for an exhibition, explaining how false ownership records could deceive collectors and museums. Ruth called a return to Rook House, though she ordered the speaking vent sealed. Nell Ward supervised the work herself. Reed gathered the evidence from Wolfe's desk. The officer placed handcuffs on Pike. Another prepared to return Jonah to custody. Before standing, Jonah looked at Wolfe. When did you know the proof was in the cylinder? When Archie reported the gramophone contained beeswax. That wax came from the poison. Some did. But the wax on the cylinder wrapper contained no poison. It was used only to seal something also. You insisted the cylinder had vanished, though it was later found in an unusual wrapper. You hid it before the murder, expecting to recover it after suspicion moved elsewhere. Jonah shook his head. I nearly succeeded. No, Wolfe said. You accumulated too many explanations. A sound lie must remain simple. Yours required a cage, a clockwork bird, a hidden passage, a recording, 2 poisoned thorns, 3 planted fibers, a false perch, an umbrella, and an open window. You did not construct doubt. You advertised design. Jonah stood as the officers took him toward the hall. Amos Bell stepped aside. He did not offer his hand or say farewell. Reed closed the finch's silver back and returned it to the upper perch. Then he shut the little brass door. The bird never escaped, he said. Only the truth did. Wolfe regarded the cage temporarily. He corrected. The guests left shortly before midnight. Fritz brought Wolfe a final glass of beer. I entered the case details into my notebook. Gideon's murder, the forged artifacts, Pike's fraud, Jonah's recording, the poisoned blowpipe, and the document hidden inside the sound of his own false alibi. Outside, rain had stopped falling over New York. By morning, Riddle Street was quiet again. The police cars were gone. The archive vent was sealed, and the silver finch rested behind its closed door. But the windows of number 24 remained dark and watchful. After a case like that, even a locked window looked as though it knew where the next secret had been hidden.